Hello, once again, you are welcome to my daily teacher made simple. We are continuing our chapter by chapter discussion or analysis of Redemption Road by Elma Shaw. And like I said at the beginning, Redemption Road basically looks at Liberia, post-war Liberia, Liberia after the Civil War, and it brings us face to face with some of the challenges, some of the repercussions of war, and some of the difficulties that people go through after the war has ended. Now, today, chapter 3, we are going to look at the work of healing. Chapter 3, the title I've given to the work of healing. So, on your screen, you can see we begin to see that Bendu also suffered during the war or during the Civil War. She struggles with memories she tries to suppress because she's helping other people. Now let me go into detail. So attention has been refocused on Bendu Lewis. And Bendu Lewis, who worked as or he works as a trauma counselor. And her duty is to help survivors of the Civil War. So her job involves guiding individuals that have gone through painful experiences, traumatic experiences during the war. Her duty is to help them to process or to confront their memories. Some of these memories are memories of violence, memories of losses, memories of abuses, physically, sexually, psychologically. Her duty is to help them confront them. The first step to recovering is confrontation or self-realization. So that's what she did. And it introduces us to one of or some of a counseling environment where some of the survivors gather to share their experiences. Bendu, also a survivor, but in this case, the leader, listens carefully to their stories, attempts or tries to encourage them to suppress the emotions that many of them have kept hidden for years. And once those emotions remain with them, remain in their heart, remain in their system or remains in their system, it will be very difficult for them to fully heal, to fully recover. So she tries to encourage them. Now, she is always calm and compassionate. She has this demeanor of calmness and compassion, and that makes her trusted among those that she's trying to help. So even though she's seeking help to all those that are seeking help, trust her because of that compassion that she shows to them. Now, through her interaction with the clients, I'll call them clients or the survivors, we get to learn as readers that many of these survivors struggle with persistent psychological challenges, and it's very traumatic. Some of the challenges are fear, guilt, anger, shame, etc. And they are very traumatic for them. Some individuals have lost beloved family members. Others have endured physical, emotional abuse during the war. If you talk about abuses, the women mainly get abused sexually, psychologically, and some of these sexual abuses lives with the victim for ages, for years. Now, although Bendu herself appears confident and professional in her role, deep down subtly, there's a suggestion that she is not entirely free from trauma herself. Certain comments and emotional reactions that she makes or that you could read about indicate that she may have experienced similar suffering during the war. And definitely she did experience it, and we'll be looking at some of them. But she portrayed her professional setting, her professionalism, and that helps the author to introduce her to someone committed to helping others. No, introduce her, sorry, to someone committed to help others to rebuild their life. Okay, so this was where the author introduced her to somebody else who could be her potential sponsor, someone who will sponsor her to help others in the society. So at the same time, we get a hint that her own journey towards healing is far from completion. Very soon, I'll introduce you to her encounter with Commander Cobra and how that traumatized her, how that's affected her, to inform you that she hasn't healed herself. Now, some analysis that we can take, I always like to do this for you. Some key issues that you can take from the chapter 3 is Bendu represents the paradox. The paradox of someone who is trying to recover from trauma, still struggling with her own past or unresolved past, but still try to help others. She is trying to recover herself but has to keep it, hide it behind and try to help others, and that is paradoxical. Then we have psychological realism, the real aspect of psychology. So the council sessions actually highlighted the effect of war and the importance of mental health, which I think a lot of people take for granted these days. But here we are not looking at general mental health, we're looking at mental health of post-war victims. Then there has been a lot of foreshadowing. So Bendu's personal experience foreshadows later revelations that will connect her directly to the violence she helps others. Good. I mentioned that though she's being professional and though she's trying as much as she can to help others, deep down she has her own psychological issues that will be revealed to us. Finally, chapter 3. There has been emotional healing, there has been empathy and compassion, and we get to were revealed or were brought face to face with hidden trauma. Let's move on to chapter 4. So the voices of survivors is here, and on the screen you have Bendu learns that Commander Cobra, a former rebel leader, has returned to Morovia after the war. Morovia is in Liberia after the war, and this is going to be interesting. When you read this chapter, it depends on your emotional strength and your relationship with what you are reading or you read. You might shed some tears. So Bendu leads a group counseling session in this chapter that was attended by several women who suffered during the Civil War. And among these women are Rosetta, Josephine, and Tene. Tene, a young girl that went through a lot, each carrying deep or deeper painful memories. So during the session, every woman was encouraged to share their story or their experiences openly, no fear of being judged or anything. But one particular emotional moment that when I read, I felt some goosebumps all over me was Tene, when Tene read a letter describing her experience during the war. Now, before she even agreed to read the letter, a lot of encouragement had to happen because when others were talking, she was listening but just gazing on the floor into nothingness, not ready to listen, to share her part. But finally, she read the letter. In the letter, she recounts how her mother, in her desperate attempt to save them, that herself and her brother handed her over to rebel soldiers when she was only 12 years old. Now, when you read the story, a lot happened. They were hiding in the bush and with her brother, her mom, and it got to a point they were hungry, so the mother decided to go and get food, but things became very difficult. The mother didn't come back. And I think that was when the mother handed them over to the rebel leader. The mother thought that that is her way of saving them, but it left unanswered questions in the mind of Kenny because she didn't understand. She wants answers for that. Now, this story actually shocked the group and highlighted the tragic choices that many civilians or many families faced or had to make during the war or the conflict. And Tennis testimony also reveals how brutal these rebel forces can be. I call them guerrillas, untrained soldiers that were given guns, and they can be very brutal, and their actions can impact people or victims negatively. It can leave devastating psychological effects on their victims, and most of them are sexually violent, sexually abusive. So these counselors attempt to guide these women towards forgiveness and emotional recovery, actually reveal to us the role that Bendu played, and the stories from these women also further reinforces the repercussions of civil war. Now the conversation made it so clear that the healing is going to be very slow and a complicated process. The counselors made it so clear to them so that they will understand. But through sharing their personal experiences and others, they begin to support each other. Now, the healing process became communal, no more individual. Now, some points to take from this chapter. The testimony as narrative strategy. So, allowing them to speak directly through letters and personal recounts gives them voices as individuals. So, the voices of the victims give them voices as individuals to share their experiences, what has been hidden in them. Now there's a lot of moral complexity. So the mother's decision, Tenet's mother's decision to give her up to the rebel forces, like it brings about extreme pressure faced by civilians during the war. And you might judge the mother in your own ways, but if you think deeply, she might not have enough choices. And as a mother's instinct, she felt that that was the best thing to do at that moment. Then we also learned in this chapter that healing is collective. One person cannot do it alone, but together it could be achieved. Some things that we could take is sexual violence and exploitation, complexities of forgiveness, healing through shared stories, uh, a mother's love. I want to tell you like that, a mother's love. Now, finally, on part two of this analysis of the chapter by chapter analysis, we are looking at chapter 5. The return of the past, flashback, reminiscing, bringing back the past. So on your screen now, you can see the news shocked Benji because Cobra was the man who captured and abused her during the war. So the return of Cobra actually shocked her. Now, this chapter marks a dramatic turning point in the story, in the narrative. So after a counseling session with the women, Bendu decided to go home. On her way home, she had interaction with the market women, trying to encourage them and the rest. Then unexpectedly, she encountered Commander Cobra, a former rebel leader who actually played a very significant role in the violence of the Civil War. And Cobra is known or was known during the time of the war for his brutality and the suffering he inflicted on civilians during the war or the conflict. So Bendu, don't forget that he was the one who captured and maltreated Bendu. So Bendu seeing him again shocked her to the bone and immediately brought back memories, memories that she never thought she could bring, but she's working so hard to suppress. She's working so hard to overcome. They all came back to her all over again, fresh. Now, this encounter was brief. She has to hide, and then Commander Cobra was on phone having a conversation with someone. She has to keep hidden until Cobra was leaving or left. He followed slowly, quietly, and went home. It was a short encounter, but emotionally overwhelming, emotionally intense, emotionally long. So she experienced intense fear, she experienced anger, she experienced confusion as she remembers the horror that can be associated with the name Cobra and her militia, the guerrillas. Now, for this moment, or for a moment, she struggles to maintain her composure. Don't forget, this is someone who has been suppressing all this emotion just to be able to help others. Healing is collective. We learned that from chapter 4. Now, everything is back again. Now, the experience forces Bendu to confront the painful realities that many individuals responsible for wartime atrocities are now living freely in society. So there has been people who went through the same thing, they are now living freely. Are they really living freely? That's the question to ask. Yes, they are free. They can walk around. They can do things they couldn't have done during the war, but they move with the war. They move with the effects of the war. They move with the repercussions of the war. And the ones that inflicted this pain are walking freely without punishment. They have been allowed to reintegrate themselves into the everyday lives of every other person. And this is a painful reality that Bendu has to experience. Now, Bendu couldn't sleep that night. A lot went on with her that fateful night. And this realization deeply disturbed Bendu. The realization that the careers of the atrocities haven't received the kind of punishment that they have or they deserve, haunted her a lot, and it caused her to question the justice system and find out if true justice has ever been achieved. As a reader reading from afar, I can say that true justice wasn't achieved. And this also awakened a kind of determination within her to challenge the silence surrounding crimes committed during the war. So she's taking up another task, another battle in this chapter. Now, some of the key things you can take from chapter 5 is that Cobra is a symbol of unresolved justice. Her presence and reintegration into the society as a warlord without consequences, without being accountable for her action, tells we readers that justice has not fully been delivered. Now, this chapter also reminds us of the psychological impact of trauma. So her emotional reactions demonstrate how deeply traumatized she was or she is, and informs us that some of these survivors are going to live with this trauma for the rest of their lives. Then we have a new conflict, a new central conflict that is coming up. Bendu's attempt to confront the past and seek justice despite the risk involved. She is ready to fight the past. She is ready to fight the system. No more, she's no longer limited to just helping a group of people to overcome or to heal collectively. No, now she wants to fight the system. She wants to take the risk and bring back justice. She wants to try to see if she could do that, achieve that. So justice over silence is one thing that you could look at, or justice versus silence. The persistence of trauma. That usually trauma generally can be persistent, but the ones that have been accrued during war, then we have moral courage. That is Bendu's courage. It's becoming a bit longer, so see you in the next part, part 3, where we start from chapter 6. Bye bye.